We've known you long enough to know what it's like.
The early mornings,
Whatever the weather,
the pests,
the weeds,
diseases,
the demands of the crops,
the shops,
rising expectations,
Tightening regulations,
growing populations,
putting food on everyone's table.
caring about nature and the land.
and what you leave behind for future generations.
No wonder we think farming is the biggest job on earth.
no wonder it's getting bigger.
So, what can we do to help?
BASF. We create chemistry.
Agroubezpieczenia to polska marka należąca do Pocztowego Towarzystwa Ubezpieczeń Wzajemnych. Głównym celem agroubezpieczeń jest upowszechnianie ubezpieczeń rolnych i zwiększanie ich dostępności dla polskich rolników. Dzięki temu każdy rolnik może ubezpieczyć na poczcie to, co dla niego najważniejsze – blisko swojego gospodarstwa, bez konieczności podróżowania do większych miejscowości.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar that is part of the European Agricultural Forum. Normally, probably all of us would be in Jasionka or near Jasionka in the south of Poland, where the European Agricultural Forum has been happening or was happening for years. But it's impossible for us to meet offline. Therefore, we are here online in a studio. I myself am going to moderate this webinar on the meaning of innovation in agriculture and funding opportunities within the Common Agricultural Policy. My name is Karol Bujoczek, and I'm editor-in-chief of Top Agro Poland. And we will take the next 2 hours to discuss innovation in agriculture. We all know that for hundreds of years, agriculture has been innovating, and there was a strong acceleration somewhere in mid-19th century in terms of innovation. Things that used to be amazing decades ago today seem like a small step in the innovation journey. Every single generation knows its own inventions and own cases of innovation, and we are here to talk about how to do things better, more effectively, more efficiently in the context of our future common agricultural policy that is supposed to be more green, more environment friendly, and more resource sustainable. Today, I have with me in this discussion experts from a number of areas and a number of specialties. Let me introduce them. I will start with the lady who is among us, Dr. Kerstin Burseg, who is Program Manager for Innovation at EIT Food. So it's the European Institute for Innovation and Technology in the food sector. Dr. Burseg specializes in food sciences, food product sciences, and she's been heading this program, namely innovation in sustainable agriculture. Now, let me introduce my panelists in the studio, Minister Marek Zagórski, who is the Secretary of State for Digitalization, and he coordinates digitalization in the government sector. He used to be Secretary of State at the Ministry for Digital Affairs, and in 2008 2018 or between 2018 and 20, he was the Minister for Digital Affairs. He used to be the Secretary of State at the Ministry of Agriculture. And for many years, he headed the European Fund for the Development of the Fund for the Development of Rural Areas. We have with us Michał Wiśniewski, who is Deputy Director General for the National Support Center for Agriculture. He graduated from the Wyszyński University, and currently he's vice or deputy director for the National Agricultural Support Center. He used to work at the Ministry of Digital Affairs and dealt with artificial intelligence. In the studio, we have Dr. Witold Łykowski, who is head of R&D at BASF. Dr. Łykowski is responsible for competence centers at BASF, and these competence centers run a number of market registration studies. He also collaborates with a number of academic and scientific centers across the country. I would like to also welcome to our discussion everyone else who is online, who is joining us online. Let me start with Wolfgang Burtscher, who is General Director at DG Agriculture, so Agriculture and Development of Rural Areas, representative of the European Commission. He used to be, for many years, head of research and innovation at the European Commission. He was responsible for research and innovation/research policy in agriculture and health. Very happy to have you with us. Great. We also have Dr. Jerzy Plewa, who is former General Director at DG Agri. One can say that, well, he's quite well known, famous in Poland for the fact that, well, he used to be Undersecretary of State at the Ministry of Agriculture. He used to be was responsible for our negotiations with the European Union back in the day. And one could say that, well, as part of this negotiation team before our membership in the European Union, he is one of the authors of our joining the European Union the way we did. I would also like to welcome with us, albeit online, Professor Józef Pope, who represents the Agricultural and Life Science University from Hungary. He's an active member and chairman of a number of academic and business or industry organizations. Last but not least, we also have Dr. Arkadiusz Majo. He's head of Innovation and New Technology Innovation Office at PKN Orlen. He graduated from, or he has a master's degree in chemistry, and right now he heads the Innovation Office, and he's responsible for developing new technologies at PKN Orlen. So after this brief presentation of our panelists and what they specialize in, let me remind you, or let me just say that innovation is a topic that we can discuss and is best discussed with many experts from many different disciplines. So I would like us, first of all, I would like our panelists to answer this question. How should we perceive innovation in the agricultural or in the food and agricultural sector? What is innovation? How should we perceive it, especially in the context of sustainable farming and in the context of all the challenges that the sector is facing, especially given the new green order and given the future shape of our common agricultural policy in the context of biodiversity and the field or farm-to-table strategy. So the first to speak, Wolfgang Butcher. Please, the floor is yours.
Many thanks for your kind invitation to the Agricultural Forum. Moderator, you have already indicated the challenges which we are facing. I think the current agri-food system is stretching our planetary boundaries, and therefore at the international level, at European level, we will make huge efforts to ensure that our agriculture becomes more sustainable. And you have already referred to the Green Deal strategies, in particular the Farm to Fork strategy and the biodiversity strategy, which do not only require action from the farmers, but certainly also from the farmers. If you consider the ambitious targets in terms of reduction of pesticides, of manure or fertilizer, increased organic farming, antimicrobial resistance, more landscape features, biodiversity, you see that we require research and innovation. I also feel that in particular with respect to our activity as common agricultural policy, research and innovation has a huge potential to address the trade-offs which we are often facing between income for farmers, having a sustainable, ecological sustainable agriculture, and have a social sustainable agriculture. There are often quite conflicting objectives in our policies, but research and innovation, I think, will help us to mitigate possible trade-offs. So there is no doubt we need research and innovation, and you know that Horizon Europe, the European Union Framework Program for Research and Innovation, dedicates huge amounts in the next period for research and innovation in this area, and in particular also in the research related to organics. But it's not enough to have research and innovation. I think one of the key challenges which we are all facing, be it in Poland, be it in other parts of the European Union, is the deployment, the scaling up of new techniques in research and innovation to ensure that farmers use the latest technologies. And therefore, I feel that the provision of advice to farmers, as we do it now in the new Common Agricultural Policy through the so-called AKIS, the Agricultural Innovation System, will help us also to deploy new practices. So this is hugely important, I think. It's important to have research and innovation, but it's equally important to deploy it. And the last point I would like to make, if we want to use latest technologies and provide incentives to farmers to use such research and innovation, they need the skills, and I have referred to this through the advisory services, but they also need financial incentives that makes it attractive to deploy on their fields, on their farms, new practices. And I think, again, in the new common agricultural policy, and in particular through the eco schemes and through agri-environmental measures, which we will support in the second pillar of the common agricultural policy, we will provide financial incentives that the farmers can deploy new technologies which will be helpful to address our environmental challenges, be it in terms of clean water, be it in terms of healthy soil. You all know these challenges which we are facing. So I think research and innovation play a key role, but we need to put in place the whole value chain to ensure that research and innovation is really developed. And as I said, this is decisive if we want to meet policy objectives in terms of Green Deal, but it's also decisive in terms of our competitiveness. And as I said at the beginning, it will help us to mitigate some of the conflicts, the possible trade-offs between income of farmers and addressing ecological challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to ask, what about EU farmers? How to explain to them at what level they should be more innovative? Because across the European Union, we have very different technology levels and very different development levels. We know that we need to reduce fertilizers or certain kinds of fertilizers and pesticides, but everyone is wondering where, from which point they should limit it. How do we explain to them at what point exactly they should start being innovative?
I think firstly, as you rightly point out, the situation and the baseline in particular with respect to the use of pesticides and fertilizers are very different amongst member states, and even within member states you have very different situation. So there is not one size fits all that will make us happy. We have tried, the European Commission, to at least already provide information to all member states regarding the baselines they are faced with when it comes to the most important environmental challenges. And we have addressed recommendations to all member states in the end of December 2020, where we have asked all member states, in view of their new strategic plans, to address the challenges which we have identified, and they have identified, by the way, in their SWOT analysis. So I think it is hugely important that national governments, and if I say national governments, it's at all governance levels, regional, local, and national level, to provide the necessary tools to farmers that they are able to apply new technologies. And this is on the one hand the skill side, and I hope that through the ARCIS, as I've indicated, farmers will be much better trained in the future to deploy such technologies. But as I also said, we have to see these new technologies also in the context of addressing environmental ecological challenges. And if farmers deploy these technologies, they will have financial incentives through the eco schemes remuneration, through remuneration in the agro-environmental measures. So I think it is really at the level of the member states then to identify the challenges and the expectations they have towards their farmers, and then to provide the necessary tools that farmers can deploy these techniques.
Thank you so much, sir. So now I'm going to ask this question to someone in the studio. Innovation, what is it? How should we perceive it? How should we understand and define innovation in the agri-food sector? I'm asking this to Minister Zagórski. Right now, you are very much dealing with digitalization and digital affairs in your current position, but you know a lot about the agri-food sector. So how do we understand innovation in this context? Well, good afternoon. I'm very happy that we've managed to organize this forum, even though it is happening online, especially that this tradition and history behind the European Agricultural Forum is relevant enough that we need to continue. I would like to thank everyone, including some of my acquaintances and friends, including people who are on this panel with me. So going to your question, I think we should look at it a bit more broadly, because before we start talking about innovation in a classic sense is using old solutions in a new way. So that's the classic definition of innovation. Of course, you can look at innovation from various perspectives, but today we're talking about innovation we should understand it as being more and more modern and being more and more efficient. Director Butcher he mentioned some important things, because if we are going to have innovation, to have benefits coming from innovation, we have to start from the baseline. We have to start from the base, namely infrastructure. If we are to have innovation in the agricultural sector, in the agri-food sector, we have to have the right infrastructure. So broadband internet as a very basic tool, and well, access to the internet should be accompanied by a whole capacity or capability in terms of data processing, so that farmers can be also part of the data economy. And I'm not just talking about rural areas, I'm not just talking about farmers, I'm talking about data sharing and a data system across the whole country. We're talking about economy 4.0, industry 4.0, all these things are linked, and they boil down to the fact that we should be able to build our potential and our capabilities based on data. When we're talking about the agri-food sector, I would say the biggest challenge is that we should be able to take advantage, to harness new technology, including data processing and data technology, in order to make agriculture more efficient and to be able to fulfill the important strategic goals like environmental protection. So again, one can confront these things and say we need to have, farmers have to get income, and on the other hand, we need to protect the environment. So these are two confronting issues, but I would say the point behind innovation is to make these things, to make sure that there's synergy between these two sides rather than opposition. We should build tools that will allow us to harness the potential of agriculture, harness the potential of data that's being accumulated in the agricultural sector, so that we can achieve our goals and be efficient. For example, save the environment, namely conserve water, or use fewer plant protection products, and so on and so on. But if we can implement modern, innovative solutions better, then we'll save everywhere we need to save. And then it would mean maybe income for farmers doesn't have to go down. Maybe they can keep their income. Or maybe we don't even have to add subsidies to make sure that they have their income, right? So for us, innovation should be like an opportunity in order to not only make farming more modern, but also make the whole rural ecosystem more modern. It's all connected. Therefore, we very much focus on, at my ministry, very much focus on developing our infrastructure, developing competences, very important. But apart from infrastructure, we need to use new technology, so access to infrastructure, increasing people's competences, which will lead to the ability, the motivation to use things like Internet of Things, AI, to make sure that the data that we collect really help us grow as an economy.
Thank you for these words. Of course, farmers firstly produce food. This is why we have the European Community. This is why it was founded, to guarantee food security and peace in Europe. Today, we are not talking about that security now, because we think that this is something which is given, and for decades it has been stable. So we're not talking about food security, but we are talking about the quality approach. And I would like to give the floor to Dr. Kerstin Burstek, who's manager for innovations in EID food, and she understands the needs of the consumers, because we are aware of the fact that today's approach to the new Green Deal, new Green Order, and Common Agricultural Policy is the effect of adequate approach of the consumers and certain expectation on the side of the consumers who are thinking about how this food is being produced. Is it environmentally friendly? Could you say a few words about how you understand the innovations in agriculture and in the food sector, please?
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you very much for the organizers to having me invited to this webinar. So I have actually prepared a couple of slides. I'm not quite sure if they are going to be shown now or at a later stage. But I'm sitting here because I'm representing a pan-European innovation community, EIT Food. And to us, innovation in agriculture is a challenge that is addressing everybody in Europe, from citizen up to policy makers. And we, as a multi-stakeholder pan-European innovation community, we would like to challenge to tackle all these challenges that are being that are apparent if it comes to sustainable agriculture nowadays. So EIT Food has a mission to make the food system more sustainable, healthy, and more trusted. And we would like to make sure that food is accessible and enjoyable to everybody in Europe. And for these reasons, we are funding activities that are inclusive and systemic. So as I said, sustainable agriculture is a problem that is a problem of a multi-stakeholder system. And we are represented in several areas in Europe in order to also give regional support. And we have as objectives to overcome low consumer trust, because one of the key points in innovation is also to have consumers buying into whatever solutions we are delivering, and also the food that is being prepared is for the European citizen. So next to the trust, we are also striving towards more healthier nutrition. We would also like to have a better connectivity of the food system. We are caring very much about sustainability. And then also I would like to dwell on the point that education is of utmost importance. On the one hand, we're talking about the skill set for the farmers. On the other hand, we talk about the skills and the perception of the European consumer that the farmer indeed is a safeguard of our environment, and they are the ones that are producing our food. So we should make use of this emotional connection also the consumer has to the food and to the primary sector. And on the other hand, very important in innovation in the agri-food sector is also to catalyze entrepreneurship and innovation. And so to sum up, what we have to do in terms of innovation for the European farmers is to provide them with a toolbox that is equipped with climate smart and robust tools for sustainable agriculture. And here we also, next to being a multi-stakeholder innovation community, we also have to offer a multitude of approaches that are including innovation approaches, but also business creation, education, and communication. And we are an instrument under Horizon Europe, and we are funded by the European Union. And we strive towards developing innovation solutions that are close to the market. So we don't fund research as such, but we fund innovation solutions that are targeted towards the needs of the European farmers, because one quintessence of the whole story is that innovation must address the needs of the European farmers. So as a take-home message, innovation in the agriculture sector must be in the responsible of a multi-stakeholder innovation community. It must be addressing the needs of the farmers, and it should be in co-creation also with the European citizens, who in the end of everything are the beneficiaries of everything that the farmers as the safeguarders of the European environment are providing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask about one thing, because in your project there are a lot of activities at the junction of contacts with consumers. Why consumers have this limited trust? You have listed it almost at the beginning, that there is this very low trust towards food. So what does it result from in this entire chain of supply from the field to the table? Where should we react to this lack of trust, and how?
Yes, so the lack of trust has been observed since for many years. There have been too many scandals around food production. So it's understandable that the European consumer would like to be more involved, better understand where the food is coming from, better understand how it is being produced. And we have an extensive outreach program engaging with the European citizen in order to build trust, in order to inform and educate them and answer their questions. So it's called Food Unfolded, and you can find it on our website. And interestingly, the European citizens, they have kind of a split opinion. So they trust very much the small farmers, the small European farmers, as they are the guardians of the environment, as they are really also in innate touch with the nature. But they are more distrusting the larger farms just because of the use of pesticides, the use of fertilizers. They care about animal welfare and so on. So our approach is really to enter this dialogue, to be interactive, to bring consumers to the farms, to bring farmers together with consumers, to make everything more transparent, to answer the questions that the consumers have, and educate the consumer.
You've mentioned also various programs like Horizon 2020, for instance, but we know that in Horizon 2020, the means devoted to food sector are small. It's only 5%, actually. So is it enough insofar as the financial commitment for the support of these activities?
So I'm here representing an innovation community as a scientist. So I'm not at liberty to discuss about financial topics. But anyway, whatever is being invested in the European agri-food sector should always be targeting directly the needs of those we are innovating for.
So we leave the financing subject to the second part of the discussion. And for sure we'll talk about it, but now I would like to move to Hungary. I understand that Professor Pop has a bit of time and he's not involved so much into today's football match. Our team reached Hungary. So we keep our fingers crossed for our team. You keep your fingers crossed for your team. But let's talk about the innovations. How do you perceive innovations in agriculture and food sector in Hungary, and how we should understand it in the future, in the context of the future CAP, please?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation to the forum. The EU has a positive trade balance of food and agricultural products, so food security is not the major issue. The main point is nutrition security. What does it mean? Meeting dietary needs of consumers, and innovation can play a key role in that. But I think innovation is a driving force of the circular bioeconomy. You know that the EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050 with an economy of net zero greenhouse gas emissions. It means that fossil carbon has to be replaced by biocarbon step by step by 2050. So we have to put innovation in a broader context of the Green Deal. And digitization has a major role in the Green Deal as well. Digitization can increase profitability, improve working conditions for farmers, and reduce the environmental impact of agriculture, and can help to meet the dietary needs of the consumers as well. Some of the digital methodologies in agriculture are already in use in several member states, new member states as well, like Poland and Hungary. For example, robotics or precision farming, while others still need to be further enhanced. For example, decision support tools, digital marketing, or digital innovation hubs. The introduction and uptake of technologies requires new skills and knowledge for farmers and advisors. Traditionally, technical innovations have been provided to farmers by equipment manufacturers and farm suppliers, and the advances in machinery, information technology, and even biotechnology are a part of precision farming. The main challenge is to find ways for small and medium-sized farms to benefit from the new technology innovation. What small farmers may face is lack of resources to invest in precision farming. You know, the first bottleneck is the farm structure. The EU has about 10 million agricultural holding with an average area of 16 hectares and with a wide size range between member states. Second bottleneck is the level of training of farmers in the EU, because it's generally low. About 70% only have practical experiences, and just 8% have attended a full agriculture training course. So farmers will need to be better trained with access to independent advice to make use of innovation or precision technology. And the overall number of farmers is declining in the EU, in Poland, in Hungary as well, but the proportion and the different age groups remains constant. And that's another issue, because 1/3 of farmers are older than 65 years, and just 6 to 7% are less than 35 years. It's another issue whether they can take up innovation and the new techniques of precision farming. Thank you.
In Hungary, indeed, your farms are typically larger. So given the fact that farms are larger in size, you could introduce innovation faster, quicker. Is it really happening? Or are you still finding difficulties in implementing innovation in practical agriculture, in practice?
Yes, Hungary has a scattered farm structure. We have very large farms and very small farms. Large farms over 10,000 hectares, large, let's say at least 5,000 hectares. And these farms are professional, and they have no problem with the introduction of the innovation technology, but most of the farms are very small. The average farm size in this category is just 8 hectares, 8. Less than the average farm size in the EU, which is 16 hectares. And I think they are generally old farmers, not very well trained, and they are not interested in digitization. The answer is all the time, okay, my son or my daughter will inherit my farm and they will deal with precision farming. So what happened in Hungary that in the last 5 years, less and less farmers introduced precision farming in Hungary. So the number of farms is declining regarding the introduction of precision farming. It's very interesting. 80% of equipment, machinery is equipped with all the tools of precision farming. but maybe just 20% of farmers make use of these tools they bought. They don't use the tools. They have the tools, they don't use them. As I mentioned,
Why is this happening? This is
level of
very
training, age structure, farm structure, and the level of training. Three main issues.
Indeed, this was surprising to hear that they have all those tools and all the machinery and all the equipment, but lots of them, they don't use it. This is surprising. We will get
Yes,
back
because
to how farmers can use innovation, but let me follow with the next speaker in our round of answers. So how should we understand and how should we define innovation? Over to Dr. Pleva, who is an expert at Team Europe, and he's former Director General of DG Agri. So how should we define and understand innovation in the context of our future challenges posed in front of us by the Green Deal? Good afternoon. Very good to hear you. Very good to see you. Thank you for this question. I think that this is something that we need to focus on, especially that innovation is something that's been around for a long time. But the important thing is the application of innovation, not just innovation itself. Already Edison said that the value of any idea lies in its application, in its utility. A lot of the times, good ideas are not really implemented. Therefore, years ago, the European Partnership for Innovation was created, and it was supported by DG Agri. So there were groups who were going to help scientists, farmers, and other experts to collaborate in order to reach innovation. But right now, we have a new challenge. This new deal, this new European Green Deal, is a result of the fact that finally we've noticed that the resources of this planet are abused. They are used 1.6 times faster than they can be restored by nature. Therefore, we are so much focusing on sustainable development. Therefore, in the coming years, innovation, including innovation in agriculture, because agriculture is part of the problem, and we need it to become part of a solution. So we need to make sure, ensure that these new challenges are addressed. We've been saying that, or we said that food security is our big problem. But all those systems that were formed in the 80s did not really lead to the solution of the problem of hunger and malnutrition all around the world. Actually, we have issues of hunger in some countries and waste of food and obesity and overconsumption in other regions of the world. So there's a lot to be done still. And when we're looking into the future, well, I think that two aspects or two factors are going to be very important. One, that's been mentioned before today, namely digitalization. In order to move forward, in order to progress, we need to harness the power of science. And secondly, green transformation. And I think we will get back to get to talking about specific solutions and specific technological proposals. But scientists in Poland have already noticed that we need more knowledge per hectare. We need more know-how per hectare, especially that progress is not just new technology or new machines. It's also new knowledge-based solutions. So we need more knowledge per hectare. In the coming years, I think that we should focus on developing our knowledge. And there's a lot to be done. I looked at what's going on in the Visegrad group, in the Visegrad countries, When we look at digitalization and infrastructure that's needed to be more digital, well, this requires a lot of investment, but currently there's not much we haven't achieved much in the digital economy and society index, DESI. We are number 23 in Europe. When it comes to broadband access in rural areas, it's 32.6%, while the EU average is 50-something percent, so a lot to catch up. And I think that for the coming years, it's going to be key to what extent these challenges are going to be reflected in the strategic plan for rural areas and agriculture. And this plan is being consulted and drafted right now. And this plan should show us the way to achieve those goals, like, for example, reducing emissions through using our knowledge and using knowledge-based solutions. So far, our use of knowledge-based solutions in the agricultural sector has been rather scarce. You were mentioning Horizon 2020, but only 5% of it goes to agriculture. Poland and other member states are going to have been using these funds to a very small degree, especially that these funds are not allocated between countries. They are allocated to specific projects, not countries. So still, we have a lot to do, a lot of room for improvement. So in the years to come, we should focus on these things: more knowledge per hectare, more sustainable food production from each hectare, so a more sustainable hectare of land. So a more sustainable hectare, yeah, this sounds good. Indeed, farmers have to find the common grounds and middle ground between environment and the economics of production. Farmers are businessmen. They need to have economic stability. So what elements, what we're missing, what we've been missing in the recent years that prevented us from using the knowledge, preventing us from getting to a higher level of knowledge? You were mentioning that Poland was not faring so well compared to other European countries.
I think that still, despite a certain improvement, what is lacking is a good connection between a combination of practice with science. So there is a lot to do insofar as the engagement and commitment and cooperation between the academia, between agricultural universities, and industry and farmers. I've mentioned these groups. There was supposed to be 3,200 in EU. In Poland, this number is very small for now. So this is one of the reasons for lower use of the means within the development of rural areas. For example, under the activity cooperation or transfer of knowledge, of expertise. So I think we have paid a lot of attention to direct subsidies. This is important. I do believe this is important. Farmers, first of all, need to have healthy economic situation in their farms so that farm can develop. But the second part has been neglected a little bit. We have shifted a lot of means from rural areas to direct subsidies, and we are also unfortunately planning this in the strategic plan. 30%, this is so much. So it's going to be difficult to find means, I think, for financing these new objectives, but this financial plan hasn't been presented yet. So very much so, farmers should have a stable financial situation, but it should be achieved in a different way compared to how we used to do it. For instance, up until now, and we still foresee the application of a big level of payments related to the production. So they don't make the farmer dependent on the on a given type of production. And of course, if we use these means for such purposes, we won't be able to implement other activities, other measures. Also, in the past, we also have to notice that there are some standards binding, and farmers need to apply them, even if the support is different. Yes, yes. These subsidies, additional subsidies or combined subsidies, they're not supposed to improve standards, but in general, I believe that there is a great area to change the proportions insofar as the method of support for agriculture and using the modern methods, state-of-the-art methods, for instance, infrastructure, access to internet. Poland has been shifting means from other measures for financing access to internet in rural areas into other activities. This could be very useful today on the pandemics if this situation the situation would be much better if we had better access to internet. So if there's going to be a strategic plan, adequate strategic plan, this can be done. Thank you very much. There's no better occasion to ask our Minister for Digitization if he could comment on that we waste this time and we didn't use the means to have this internet in the rural areas. I can agree with that, but not fully. In that sense that maybe Director Dr. Pleva was speaking about the means within common agriculture policy, but let's remember that there is a cohesion policy means, because this is the basic, I think, source. Right now we developed the greatest program in Europe for broadband internet. This is paid out of this cohesion policy funds, and the investments will cover the connection of about 3 million households with co-financing from the budget of the EU at the level of 4 billion zlotys. 70% out of these investments are being implemented in the rural areas, in towns below 5,000 inhabitants. This is just to show the scale. Just in Lubelskie province, this is 1,100 million zlotys for the construction of this network. And in the perspective which is in front of us within the plan and operation plan Digital Poland, for broadband internet network will have several billion zlotys, and our ambition is, and this is what results from this national plan, so that all buildings in Poland will be connected to broadband internet. And we have also other objectives, educational network all over Poland, within which all schools in Poland are connected right now to the fast internet. So this is clear that the majority of the schools are located in rural areas. So this infrastructure is being built. And I would say that we are always interested that's the index, and we always look at it, but we are doing our own thing. And I believe that we have we feel a little bit better when we look at what is happening in Poland at such a ranking or list like United Nations ranking insofar as the administration building participation. We are on the 9th and 24th level on the scale of the entire world. If we look at main statistical office data insofar as the Polish citizens using the internet, including the inhabitants of rural areas and farmers, where the growth is one of the largest, dynamics is one of the largest in Europe. So I wanted to say that here we've done a lot, much more than what could be read in the statistics, in the official statistics. But there is still a lot ahead of us. It's true, but this is also an opportunity to create this infrastructure in a complex way, in a full way, comprehensive way, and so that it would be combined with all those aspects, because the infrastructure is just the very basis. This is the foundation. And there have to be investments in skills, in competences on various levels, and afterwards we'll be able to generate developmental projects out of that. And then maybe such elements as the use of means from quite a difficult program from the perspective, well, compared to other means in CAP or cohesion policy like the Horizon program. So this requires a certain level of maturity of infrastructure and of an institutional maturity. And we're in such a moment ourselves and other countries that have joined into, that have entered the European Union at the same time, like other states from the same region. We are in a similar moment, but this is a good moment, this is a good perspective, and insofar as the pandemics, it has shown us the need, yes, it's true, of ensuring access to the internet, but it has also shown that the internet has fulfilled its role. It was able to withstand the demand. And if we're talking about the experiences from the pandemics, the greatest ones are negative. But in this area, I just wanted to say that we have a few positive things. Thank you very much for those explanations. And at the same time, I would like to encourage everyone to tell you that you should benefit from the fact that you have access to the internet. So you're sitting in front of the screens in Poland and abroad. You can comment on in the chat window, and we have the possibility to include you in our discussion. So even if you are somewhere where you didn't have internet for a very long time, and now you do have it, you do have access, please let us know. Let us just know that you are with us. And now I would like to ask Mr. Michał Wiśniewski, who's Deputy Director General of the National Support Center for Agriculture. Well, innovation notion understood by you, and through the support need also in the context of the new Green Deal. Please. Thank you very much. Maybe I would comment on what Madam Director has said, since there was a discussion about food security, about the trust in food security going down insofar as the food that we have in the shops, on the shelves. Our institution, together with the Ministry of Agriculture, is taking up the challenge because of the pilot IT program. And the Minister of Agriculture has signed a letter of intent that opens this pilot project, the pilot project that I hope you've heard about, and more people hear about it. It's passports for Polish food. What does it mean? It means that we want to, through this system, identify food at all stages of the chain of delivery, so from the field to the table. And I would like to ask you to show this slide, which talks about the structure of this system of, I don't know, issuing passports. What do we want to do through that? First of all, I would like to start with the fact that the participants of this project, of this chain of delivery, are of course producers themselves, farmers, but also sectoral associations and R&D units, and also ourselves as public administration and other institutions like the General Veterinarian. So how we want to do this? Just yesterday, we had a steering committee meeting, and the stage 1 of our pilot project was finalized, which was consultation with the sectors. We know what the food sector production sector is expecting. Right now, there is a call for proposals, call for entries, and I would like to ask all of you, all those interested potential contractors, to submit the request to the up to 9th of April. Everyone can be heard. So what is the technology? How we can monitor the food? We can, as I've said, we want to go very deeply. As you can see on the slide, just like Mr. Minister has said, through those sensors, IoT sensors, so Internet of Things, and RFID labels, we want to be able to figure out who, where, and using what method produced a specific food product. And I wanted to say that under the pilot project, we will be testing beef, pork, and also potatoes. Afterwards, as we can see, we want to know who, when, where has processed this food, and who, where, when, and how transported it to our shelves. As we can see, this project will be a very big and complex project. I hope that we will manage to do it in December this year, to launch it in December, and at the beginning of 2022, to be able to prove how we able to monitor our food from the field to the table. What will this enable us to do? First of all, to show that food safety, food security is monitored by everyone, because we can go back to that and we can see which doctor was actually examining a given cow. Was there any medication used, applied? And in the system, it's possible today. Yeah, this is our assumption, and this is we would like to talk about. This is something that we've discussed with the sectoral associations, and we'll be talking about it with the contractors, potential contractors. This is a very difficult subject, and we want to approach it in such a way. But we are not dealing only with the subject, because I'm here. I can tell you that as a country, as Poland, we are the first country which is thinking quite seriously about imaging through the satellite system, and the drafts, the drying out, and floods, etc. So we have an advisor already chosen, a legal advisor who help us to achieve success insofar as a very big tender for imaging. Just yesterday, I have signed a tender for the contract engineer who will be helping. He will be our technical advisor insofar as how we will approach it. How are we thinking about it? We are thinking about using a new formula for a public procurement law, and so innovative partnership, because we are the first country in the world and we don't know how we can achieve success in order to enter every single plot to show what is happening with that plot, if there is drought, if it's the ground is freezing, etc. So monitoring of crops. Yes, so this is the first the first phase. We are talking, this is not monitoring of crops. This is the phase number one, stage number one. So we are just monitoring the soil, yeah? And we want to, through the innovative partnership, together with the contract engineer and with the National Center for Support of Agriculture and with the legal advisor for a number of companies that will be implementing the stage number one, because nobody knows, well, the purpose is also to tell the farmers how to manage these fields, or there is an element of control which will be possible with a system like that? This is the stage number 3 that you're speaking about. So how I'm able to manage this land, yeah, like the minister has said. I have knowledge, I have information. If I have information, I am able to manage this somehow, use it somehow. If the farmer will have this knowledge that, for instance, on his field, in that spot, and satellites, and this is proven, can see it much, much faster compared to human eye because of the filters applied. Because the pilot project that it was started 2 years ago and it lasted 1 year and a half, has shown this to us. Satellites were able to see drought on the plots that were selected 1.5 months earlier. This is this effect that when we approach Warsaw and we see in which fields the water is missing, lacking. Yeah, the satellite is able to tell us that 6 weeks earlier. So if I get information that water is scarce in a given place, I can manage it somehow. So in order not to go into the details, this is going to be a system which will be commonly available under stage 3, yes. Under stage 1, the initial one, we want to, for now, just to do the imaging of the draft to help the committees that do estimates to pass decisions regarding this aspect that you've just mentioned. This is, I hope that thanks to the new means, we will be able to do it successfully quite quickly. Well, CAP is starting in 2023 because this perspective has been shifted in time, so maybe it's going to be possible to have this tool available by then. And thank you very much. This is almost the middle of our session, and we didn't finish round 1 yet. But now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Witold Łykowski, Head of Research and Development in BASF company. Please tell us how, out of the perspective of a company that works for agriculture and represents a sector which is recently we know that the Green Deal imposes the necessity to reduce those products, and we are all thinking in Poland what will be the level from which we should reduce the use those products. But we're also thinking, looking at it from the point of view of innovations in future. How farmers will be able to protect their plants independent on those restrictions that CAP brings.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Minister, BASF Poland is one of the leading providers, suppliers of chemicals for agriculture. In Poland, we offer a wide range of conventional PPPs, and I will get back to that in a moment, but let me refer to the first part of your question, the Green Deal and the very restriction, the curbing of the use of conventional PPPs. It leads to a lot of questions and a lot of controversies because we don't know the specifics of the Green Deal. When we look at countries Western countries with very intensive agriculture, they use 4 to 5 kilograms of active substances per hectare. In Poland, food is produced at a very sort of healthy, sound level, much healthier than in our neighboring countries. Polish farmer uses around 2.5 kilograms of active substances per hectare. So we need to wait for our decision makers to make a move and tell us at what level, from what level, to what level this reduction should happen. Of course, taking into account food security of every single country. That's important. Also, I would like to say that at BASF, our definition of innovation is that actually everything that you call innovation is already here. It's already available. It's already used, and it's present in the Polish agricultural sector. However, access to innovation varies. One of the speakers before me talked about R&D, talked about deploying what happens in R&D in practical terms, and it's a big challenge. And also, please remember that all these things are very costly. Not all ideas that come up and that result from R&D activities are deployed in agriculture for a very simple reason. They may be too expensive at this point in time, or they get let's say financial assistance, like for example bioinsecticides that are pheromone based. So countries, governments pay producers to make these biological products so that farmers can abandon hard chemicals. BASF is very much aware of environmental challenges and social societal expectations, and we are ready to play a positive role. Every year, we spend 10% of the value of our sales on R&D. It's a huge amount. We also apart from producing conventional PPPs, we make products like Systiva Revizol. These are new generation plant protection products, very environment friendly, but most of our investment goes towards biologics. So we have seed treatments, insecticide seed treatments, fungicide seed treatments that help us curb pathogens, and at the same time, they do not affect negatively the environment, which is a very big challenge and a very important trade-off. What else do? We work with, for example, we make urease inhibitors that we're going to offer together with the Grupa Azoty, the Polish chemical company. So urea will be applied, but only accompanied by an inhibitor. Definitely in the seed sector, we think that the process of producing seeds, of growing, it's a multi-year process. These effects, these outcomes do not happen overnight. They require investments, and we're very active. What else can we do? We make products for vegetable growers, like, for example, 100% degradable, biodegradable film is very important because farmers have a problem what to do, how to manage, and how to deal with waste coming from film. And right now, the problem needs to be dealt with by local authorities, but it's not well solved. So maybe using biodegradable films could be a good solution. So that's how we respond to existing expectations. What about which of these are already available? Like, for example, digitalization. One of you mentioned it. We have a system called Xarvio Field Manager. So based on data coming from the weather data, cultivar data, physiological data, so all the data that farmers introduce into the system help them figure out what kind of plant protection products and how much of these they have to use. So, for example, we may manage the use of nitrogen or manage the use and the level of fungicides depending on infection levels and pathogen levels. The problem is that the European Commission has been eliminating many active substances, but the industry has a hard time sort of closing the gap, especially that there is resistance to insecticides. And for example, in beets, very soon we will have simply no active substances to deal with pests. So some of the products are so if we're very innovative about growing beet, then it means we don't have enough sugar from our own plantations, and we have to import sugar beets from countries and areas that don't care about the restrictions, about PPPs that we have here. Well, definitely we have to count on our decision makers to be smart, in the sense that whatever they introduce should be based on different factors, environmental and economic. For example, rape is being grown less and less. There are less and less areas that are devoted to winter rape. And this cultivar is very, very important. And right now, it just cannot be grown organically or ecologically. So if we don't have any plant protection products we can use, simply there'll be less growing of rapeseed, and rapeseed oil consumption will fall down. And actually in our climate zone, the use of rapeseed oil in our diet is very important. When it comes to sugar beets, if active substances are prohibited, then I guess sugar beets may not be grown in Europe at all, or it might be a sink or swim. Definitely, we know that we could have precision spraying, and we could have all sorts of technologies to fight against weeds, but it's all possible in the first stage of growth of sugar beets. But in July, when we're dealing with drought, this leads to challenges. So if we eliminate existing solutions too quickly, then the market will not be able to catch up, coming up with new solutions. Therefore, we need to be smart and look at it from different points of view, and to introduce innovation that will lead to sustainable agriculture. We have right now integrated methods in agriculture, and we should use these integrated methods. And within that framework, introduce innovation. Right. It took us quite a long time to finish this round, but we've learned a lot. Dr. Arkadiusz Majoch at PKN Orlen, responsible for innovation and new technology. You've waited quite a long time for us to give you the floor. But, well, last but not least, so please tell us about innovation according to your company. The speaker before talked about urea and that now it has to be used with urease inhibitors. What else? What other innovation do you have in mind? My name is Arkadiusz Majoch. Thank you for introducing me. It is a pleasure to be part of your webinar that I can tell you about the Orlen Group and about what we do for the agricultural sector and what we offer. Our approach to innovation is very much in line with the main, let's say, traits or characteristics of innovation that have been mentioned before. So it's good to hear that both in Poland and in Hungary and within the European Commission, we have sort of a common understanding of what innovation is. Let me add just one more factor that is important, namely an integrated approach to the solutions that we have right now, to the existing solutions. Innovation should be based on an integrated approach, especially that we have many solutions already that can give us a added value when they're used together rather than when they are used alone. So I think that industry like the oil and gas industry, the petrochemical industry, understands it very well, this integrated approach. And I think that this integration makes sense also in agriculture, and it could lead to advantage. PK and Orlen and all the entities within the Orlen group offer a lot of products that are now widely used by farmers. We're talking about fertilizers. One of our companies within the group is Anvil, and they are our leading supplier of fertilizers and other solutions for agriculture, for the agri-sector. But farmers also for example, get supplied with fuel like LPG or gas from another company from our group. We have quite an impressive network. So heating oil is also something that we deal with. The use of our products in agriculture is also visible in the energy sector, namely the solar energy that's being offered by our company Energa that makes solar or PV panels. So this is very useful for individual households and farms and for bigger, more extensive solutions. Let me also add, might be a little bit of icing on the cake, namely lubricants. Lubricants are we also offer lubricants to the agricultural industry. So biodegradable oils, for example, and lubricants that are supplied and by Orlen Oil. When it comes to approach to innovation, it's been very much central to our strategy. Last year in Q4, we announced our strategy, and it's heavily leans on the notion of Industry 4.0. And of course, agriculture has something to do with Industry 4.0, and definitely we're very much interested and keen on reducing emissions, especially that we offer our products to many sectors, including agriculture. So if we limit our impact on the environment, those who receive our products, namely farmers, will also be engaged in more sustainable farming and will be engaged in curbing and limiting climate change. So we're listening to the needs of farmers and we're delivering products to them. Some of the speakers mentioned education, training farmers and working with them. Indeed, we need to remember about the importance of training and developing new ways of communicating with farmers. And of course, it's happening. Mostly, we organize special events where we can help farmers raise their qualifications, share best practices, and learn about new solutions. Anvil, our fertilizer company, is the very leader in investing in new technology. it invests in new products heavily, products that have a positive impact on the amounts of fertilizers that are used per hectare, which is part of this new approach to managing agriculture. Thank you so much for this. And I have this question. To what extent these new technologies and these new solutions are more expensive than the conventional ones? I think we need to start talking about costs and who is going to bear the costs, and to what extent farmers and the whole sector is ready to really pick up these costs. Are these costs higher, and how much higher? Well, when it comes to costs that are absolutely necessary, they have something to do with the fact that the solutions that we introduce are more efficient, more effective. So right now, at PK and Orlen, we're trying to offer better, more environment-friendly products, more sustainable products. And our investment is in hundreds of millions of zlotys. So indeed, we are trying to invest in more sustainable products. So one might expect that it does have a bearing, or it does affect prices. Currently, we're dealing with an economic crisis, so it's very difficult to estimate. And it's very difficult to specify what kind of change, what kind of delta in terms of cost we're talking about. It's very difficult to pinpoint at this point. But when we're talking about PV panels or top quality, high performance products, as a result, costs will be lower. But I cannot tell you any specific numbers and any specific cost fluctuations, especially that we're dealing with an unprecedented situation right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like us to have a discussion now, and I would like to ask you for very short interventions, and also letting us know if you want to comment on the intervention of your colleagues, so you can exchange opinions. I also want to include our participants who have asked several questions in the chat window. And the first one could be actually directed to Director Butcher. And I'm going to quote, "The EU supports research and innovations into new technologies, but the farmer pays for it, actually, because the farmer has to buy ever more expensive machines. So limitations related to the new Green Deal forces them to do that. So how can farmers deal with that? How can they tackle that, especially if they have smaller farms? If you could comment anything about this, and anyone else if would like to comment as well." Please put your mic on. We cannot hear you.
Sorry for that. Thank you very much. Let me start with research and innovation in Europe, because the figure of 5% of Horizon Europe dedicated to agriculture has been raised. Just to be clear, I think for the period 2021 to 2027, there will be 44% of this budget dedicated to agriculture and food, which is about 4 billion euros. So this is really a huge amount. Now, I think the question that the participant has raised is a very fair one. We pay publicly the research and innovation, but what happens on the farmer level? And I think because you have also asked us to comment about interventions that have been made until now, I think this question of new technologies and innovation is hugely important in the sense that we do not and we should not create a new innovation divide. And this new innovation divide would be amongst big farmers and small farmers. I think the colleague from Hungary has referred to this, and many other people who have intervened refer to this. And this seems to me hugely important because we have to develop these tools and the scaling up and the developing of the skills and the applications also in such a manner that small farmers can make use of these instruments. And if you look at some of our research projects, we have explicitly asked in the call for tender that the technologies to be developed are also fit for small farmers. I think this is hugely important. Now, when it comes to the costs at the farm level, I think I have two replies. Evidently, we will not be able to finance all these things. But be aware that when it comes to investments on the farm to address Green Deal objectives, they will be eligible for funding, investments. But then you will also have practices which ensure new working methods, production standards on the farm, which ensure that our policy objectives in ecological terms will be addressed. And your country does and will have again the possibility to develop schemes that remunerate farmers for these costs, either the income foregone or the costs they have because they produce less. So I think both under the eco schemes, future eco schemes, and on the agri-environmental measures, we will have financial tools to compensate farmers for additional efforts they are making towards ecological objectives. Investments and compensation for additional costs related to income foregone or incentives.
Advanced technologies do cost. We know that in many machines for precision farming that are considered state-of-the-art, these technologies are very expensive. And of course, only larger farms can afford them. Does it mean that when we hear also from the European Commission right now this narrative about support for small and medium-sized farms, are we going to have two directions of development for this? So the larger ones that will be able to afford to develop technologies will invest in new technologies, and smaller farms are supposed to go back to traditional farming, to the old methods in order to produce food on the local and regional level. This is a bit of a provocative question, but I would like you to comment on that, because this is also the perception of the practitioners in agriculture. Do we perceive it that way? Because, of course, consumers would like, as Madam Kerstin Burstek has said, that this food is produced in an environmentally friendly way, regionally, locally, close to us, and very often in such an environment that we remember from our childhood as it used to be, and how to put these things together. We have Dr. Pleva who wants to speak first, and then we'll go back to Dr. Burstek. Thank you very much. I don't think there are such solutions in agriculture. There's no one solution that fits all. Of course, precision farming is costly for sure, and it's not possible to be applied, to be used in all farms. With very small plots, it's actually impossible. So we have to talk in a pragmatic way with the farmers and present the issue as it is. We know that besides the possibilities to invest by those who will be able to afford those farms that will use new technologies like precision farming, there are also various other possibilities also for smaller farmers. Within the instruments which are available on the EU level, and I hope also in Poland, there will be possibilities to support farmers who will be selling foodstuff directly to consumers, so the shorter food chains. So I want to pay your attention to the growing number of IT tools supporting the work of farmers, which are already available for free also for farmers, offered by private companies. For instance, for planning or forecasting crops, harvests, this is based on what the EU has decided earlier. So there are free of charge satellite images within the Copernicus program from 2 satellites, and companies do take advantage to that. They propose it for mobile devices to use such software that allows for forecasting harvests. So it can also show us that there is drought or if the ground is freezing, because these tools also help us to forecast weather, so help farmers to take decisions. I would like to pay your attention that with the new requirements, there will be also not only a possibility, but the necessity to use a tool called FAST. This is software for farmers, which will enable them to manage the fertilizers in the soil, and this is very much advanced. It has been tested in several EU countries, and it will be available for free of charge for farmers. So actually there are many possibilities, many opportunities for various farms, independent of how rich they are. I would like to pay your attention to the fact also there are new works appearing, calculators of emissions for farms, because they will be audited, they will be controlled, and they can be controlled through satellites to a certain degree. So there are a lot of interesting things. We have concentrated mainly on innovations in products, product innovations, but I want to say that for small farms, and not only small, because in Poland we have usually medium-sized farms that invest in organic production. We have some good news today because the Commission has proclaimed the plan of activities for organic farms, and one of the tools which is considered is the so-called biocheck or eco-check. So a check which will be that you will be able to pay for organic products. There will be greater pressure put on EU programs, so that's within EU programs within which healthy food is supplied to school, that this food brought to school would be organic. So there would be demand built for such products. So I have to say that there is a lot to do still. The situation is that the average size of organic farming is 8.5%. In Poland, it was over 5%, but now it's 3.5%. Nobody knows why it happened, why it has dropped down, because the demand exists, and it's mainly imported. We think it should be 25%. So there is a greater chance also for these farms which don't have to necessarily compete through investments in precision farming, for instance. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you have mentioned these ideas also for smaller farms. This was a provocative question, because what do we understand as a smaller farm, and what can we offer them? If these are systems of quality food production, Dr. Busek has mentioned that this is also a great idea. I would like to ask Dr. Kirsten Busek to present these information insofar as organizational solutions for those farms, not only high-tech, but also tapping into the niche of food products that can have a greater value on the market and at the same time fulfill the requirement of local production with traditional methods. I understand that for a higher price with direct sales or with a shortened chain of delivery.
Yes, absolutely. I would like to come back to your initial comment that going back to nature for me is actually a way forward. So we have a project running in Southern Europe where we teach farmers, local farmers, the value of regenerative agriculture technologies. So they get a training, they get an agronomist as a support throughout a 1 or 2 years program. And we teach them to apply technologies that, for instance, are improving the health of their soils, with the soil being the most valuable resource of the farmers. And we help them to restore biodiversity, we help them to avoid soil erosion, we help them to be more resistant to climate change, etc. On the other hand, we pair them with multinationals who are interested in sourcing products who have been made with regenerative agricultural technologies. And we also are running a research study where we actually want to show that products made with regenerative agriculture technologies are actually more nutrient rich. So, and this is also paired with a broad communication initiative where we inform the consumer about the value of the farmer when they're applying these technologies, about the health of the product, about the safety of the product being residue-free, etc. And all of this is actually a multi-annual project where we hope that we can support local farmers, where we hope that we can build more trust, more transparency, and also create a new business model for local farmers and small-scale farmers.
Are consumers ready to pay a higher price for such products? Because we've been talking about it many times, that everyone is interested in having higher standards, but then the final decision is made by consumers at when they check out at the supermarket or when they're at the shelf. So are consumers ready to pay more for food that was produced using higher standards?
So we have information from consumer testing that actually on paper they're willing to buy a premium for these products. In reality, this might still look different. So for this, I would like to emphasize again the communication, the transparent communication with the consumer, that the consumer really understands the importance of sustainable food, sustainable production methodologies. And for example, if consumers buy directly from the farmer, there should not be a higher price. There should be a benefit for the farmer. So one could also pair consumers directly with the farmer to also create a better business model for them, a new business model. And then on the other hand, I think it's a matter also of generation, that the younger generation, you see it at the Fridays for Futures demonstrations, they are more aware about the impact of the agri-food system on the climate, so that they might be more open also to pay a premium. So it's about education, it's about also targeting the right groups.
So in the current situation, from the point of view of you as experts in the area, also looking at the European Commission, are there priorities that we should follow in terms of innovation? Which priorities we should focus on when we're talking about innovation? Or just like Director Butcher said, it's all up to individual member states and their national strategic plans. So do we think conservation of resources? Do we think climate change? You know, is there a list of priorities in terms of innovation, things that should be done immediately, right now? Director Butcher, please, the floor is yours. And then I will ask everyone, all the other panelists. It seems like we've lost the connection with him. So over to my guests in the studio. Minister, from my perspective, especially, well, I deal with digitalization and digital affairs, so I'm not so up to speed with what's happening in the common agricultural policy. But when we're talking about innovation in the agri-food sector, generally in rural areas, I would say the most important component, the most important element, and the highest priority should be education and competences. And I say this because competences are very important from every possible perspective, even referring to what Dr. Bursek said, so that consumers, if consumers are going to pay more for more healthy and more sustainable products, they have to have a certain knowledge, certain intellectual competences. And of course, same goes for farms. Using innovation, accepting innovation, applying innovation also takes competences, knowledge, and skills. So in this whole package, I would say competences should be our priority, especially that when we're talking about digital technologies and digital tools, these digital tools, at a certain point in time, they become, sometimes there might be entry barriers, but they become cheaper as we go. The more widespread, the more ubiquitous certain digital tools, the cheaper they become. So then it increases our chances of being more innovative. Yeah, definitely. Necessity is mother of all invention. Right. This pandemic showed it to us. But I would say competitive advantage starts with knowledge and information and being able to process information. Thanks to digital tools, we can process information very quickly. And now, playing field is becoming more and more even, more and more level. Of course, bigger farms will always have different capabilities, a bigger potential, different kind of costs, and so on and so on. But still, digital tools do something to level the playing field in the sense that digital tools can be adopted to the needs of everyone, all producers and consumers, big or small. So I would say digital tools should be are more of an opportunity than a cost. And it's not even cost, it's investment. Right, Director Burcher, we have a connection with you. I asked about priorities for agriculture. Are there any priorities in innovation? Which innovation should be, done first for agriculture?
No, certainly the framework conditions are hugely important, as State Secretary Sarkozy has just referred to. Digitalization is the mother of everything today in rural areas, skills. But if you look at the topics in which we should advance, both in terms of innovation and scaling up, it's those techniques that help us to address the big challenges. And I repeat them: reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. European agriculture is considered to contribute 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions in Europe. So you have the issue of methane emissions from livestock, fertilizer emissions. So greenhouse gas emissions is certainly one of the priority which we need to address. Then you have all these issues relating to maintenance of biodiversity or decreasing biodiversity. This is hugely important on our agenda. And then evidently related to this is how can we reduce pesticide use, as you have discussed, recognizing that this is a huge challenge, in particular in those areas where you have no alternatives, fertilizer reduction. So I think these are the areas where we from the Commission would expect that research and innovation really delivers a lot so that we can make the common agricultural policy more sustainable.
Right. And in this context, someone is asking us this question via chat. What about sequestration of CO2 by farmers? Can a system be introduced for, carbon credits? Can farmers be rewarded for curbing emissions because they bind and they can manage to do sequestration of CO2? So, Director Burcher, the question goes to you, and then to Dr. Pleva.
Indeed, the carbon sequestration is considered to be as one of the possible business models for farmers in Europe. And if you read the Farm to Fork strategy, this is specifically referred to. Evidently, this still requires further work, because how do you go about measuring what is the potential of carbon sequestration of certain land? What is the price you compensate for this carbon sequestration? Who pays for it? Public authorities or the private sector? So I think there are still quite some questions to be addressed to make carbon sequestration by farmers as a business model operational. But certainly this is something that member states, when preparing their eco schemes and their agro-environmental measures, should carefully pay attention to.
Thank you, Dr. Pleva. So very briefly, I agree with what Director Burcher was saying. I would like to say that there are methods available that allow us to bind this carbon, for example, in pastures, in green arable land. And those concepts coming from CAP are actually trying to encourage farmers to implement sequestration. But we do not have precise methods of calculating all these things, all these levels, and so on and so on. A system for that would be very complex. But actually, the reform of the CAP was to simplify the policy rather than make it more complex. Therefore, we have to look for simpler solutions, I would say. If I have the microphone, I would like to add one more comment about prices in agriculture. Well, when we're talking about more ecological products or more sustainable products, well, consumers are not always ready to pay more for that. It all depends on your income and how much money they have in their pocket. But I would say on the long run, maybe it's not a discussion for here and now, but on the long run, we need to engage in a debate whether prices of food products reflect or have included in them environmental costs. Because when we look at subsidies and the system of subsidies in many countries all around the world, including the EU, I would say subsidies do not support products that have positive impact on the environment or that have limited, very restricted negative impact on the environment. Actually, in many cases, the products that are subsidized are products that actually affect the environment in a negative way. So why are they subsidized? So we have to talk about it. So, for example, fruit and vegetables that are very healthy for us and that are made and produced with sustainable methods, they should get high subsidies so that lower prices can be offered to consumers. But actually, right now, subsidies go to grains producers, meat producers, dairy producers, and so on. So, yeah, that's my comment. Right, thank you. So let's ask Director Wiśniewski about priorities. Priorities for innovation. Well, I've been championing for quite a long time this slogan, no innovation without education. And I would say, first of all, we need to convince farmers and agri-food producers and processors that they shouldn't be afraid of innovation at all. Yeah, shouldn't be afraid of change. Because innovation can only help us manage farms, manage businesses. Just like Minister Zagórski said, at one point, when technology becomes ubiquitous, its price goes down. You mentioned it, sir. Technology is very much in line with what we need to do in terms of climate change. It can help us manage prices, convince people to buy sustainable food products, and it can help us manage climate change. And it can help us be more transparent. Technology, for example, are drones that can have a field mapped, and it could go to this specific point where weeds grow and deliver PPPs in a very targeted way. We have that. Also, you talked about sugar beets. There are robots that can use electrical impulses to annihilate any plants that are disease-ridden, that are diseased, right? Yeah. So I hope that the new Common Agricultural Policy designates or earmarks a lot of money for drones, for robots, for those self-driving tractors. I think we've seen them in California. Right. Dr. Wykowski? Very briefly, because we have 2 to 3 points. I hope that we can stay 10 minutes longer.
I agree with everyone. Well, I believe that technologies, the education is priority number one. If the technologies are available on the market, we won't be able to encourage the users to try. It should be stressed that Poland has about the highest number of young farmers. That's true, and they are open to innovations. So for sure, education is number one. And the second thing, just like it was already mentioned by my first speakers, new technologies very often, especially pro-environmental, organic, are expensive. Or very expensive. So they will not become universal immediately. So maybe at the beginning there should be subsidies for the farmers. I'm not talking about subsidies for the producer who will be very much willing to buy it and disseminate it. And the next stage, the production cycle will go cheaper, and we'll be able to talk about universal application of modern pro-environmental solutions. So thank you very much. Professor Pop mentioned that in general we have 1/3 of farmers above 65 years old, 1/3 below 35 years old, and the problem of education, especially of the older generation. Oh, I have information that we have a problem with the connection. We don't have Professor Pop with us, and I saw him. So I'll go back to this question insofar as supporting education and training. Madam Kerstin Burstek, because a lot of projects, EIT projects, are about raising competences, raising skills, and education. How we should prepare today farmers for innovative thinking on one hand, and on the other hand to apply these applications, because it was already said that the competences, skills are the most important. Are we thinking about that in schools, in university, agricultural universities, and in agricultural advisory, where the competences are necessary and the possibility to use them? Because it was very surprising what we've heard from the professor in Hungary, that 80% of equipment for precision farming is not used on an everyday basis. So maybe what's lacking are the skills, are the competences. Doctor, please.
Absolutely. So education starts at school, education starts at universities. So the better we prepare the farmers for future technologies, the better we are also equipped. So, and it's of utmost importance that this education is delivered in the right way. So farmers trust other farmers. So they learn from peers, they trust peers. And what we have developed concept, for example, it's called Focus on Farmers, where we train other farmers to train other farmers again. So the train the trainer principle, which works actually very well. And we have also seen that like this, we've reached more than 6,000 farmers in the first year. And then in 2020, when everything went online, we even reached 2,000 farmers who made the effort to be part of our online training courses. So 2,000 farmers in a specific cohort in UK, Spain and Germany, I think. So I think it's quite a nice success. But at the end of the day, any technology that we are going to develop must have an evident benefit in terms of sustainability and profit for the farmer. If this is not existing, if this is not apparent for the farmer, there will not be any technology adoption. So as I said, technologies that are robust technologies, that are easy to use technologies that can be combined with other existing technologies in combination with training and also continued support. This is, in my opinion, the way forward.
Thank you very much, Director Burcher. Insofar as new CAP, are there any means, within these means, are there educational programs and the support for use and application of these innovations in practice? Is there any attention paid to this, that the CAP means has
Indeed,
this aspect?
it is, because I think what we are facing is that there are still member states who have no advisory services for farmers, in fact. One might not believe it, but it's still the case. So what we do in the new Common Agricultural Policy is to set up mandatory advisory services that member states have to introduce in their countries, the so-called AKIS, the Agriculture Knowledge and Innovation Service, which has as a dedicated task exactly to provide advice to farmers on innovation, on new technologies, and on the many other things. So I think, yes, we take care of this matter, and it is a expenditure for member states that we can reimburse in the context of our funding policy under the CAP.
Thank you very much. One more question, Director. Insofar as the exchange of knowledge and experiences and research results on the level of the European Union, in the context of fast dissemination of innovations, do we have in Europe sufficiently good system of quick exchange of research results and innovative solutions, or is it still within the competition among those who are able to generate the innovations? Because we know that if a given company, for example, BASF, is working on some product, they're not going to share this at the stage of research. They want to make money on it. So how we can disseminate this knowledge so that innovations can be used in as many countries as possible?
I think nobody has the silver bullet for this question, because when I was working in Director General for Research and Innovation, that was one of our key challenges. We create so much knowledge. How do we ensure that this knowledge is shared at least amongst 27 member states, the public services, but then also translated to, in our case, to farmers? That's a huge challenge. So the first thing is, evidently all this science is already available. There are platforms where you can enter and you can see all these research projects. But who does it? Very few people do this kind of thing, certainly not the farmers. So you need to bring this knowledge to farmers. And I think Jerzy has already referred to some of our initiatives, which have all one thing in common, that it brings together researchers, farmers, as Mrs. Bursek has also referred to in the context of the EIT, the consumers. Jerzy has referred to the European Innovation Partnerships operational groups who are working across Europe in a cross-cutting manner and thus disseminate this knowledge. So I think, yes, we do a lot. The digital world is indeed a great opportunity to share this knowledge, but still it requires also that those who would need or who could use these technologies are actively interested in getting these technologies. And I think there are the bottlenecks where the advisory services in member states should come in. Huge challenge, not easy.
Thank you very much. And I think that now we can move to our final round insofar as how to increase the scope of the innovations for the achievement of the future CAP objectives and how to stimulate their use in practice. I would like to ask you to say a few sentences that will treat as a summary of our debate. Please, Minister. Thank you very much. Well, I'll start with the fact that this is not such an obvious area for cooperation, but it gives huge potential to do joint projects, especially around agriculture. And we have the data. All the IT tools can be only as good as the data is, and we need to collect data from a big number of farms and companies, processing companies, for instance. And here, such initiatives as the initiatives of the European Commission and Poland also participated in that, like the flow of data and other projects that are being prepared, innovation hubs, digital innovation hubs that allow to use data in an adequate way with the support, financial support for R&D. This is one of the perspectives. And the second one, because of the fact that we are on a European Agricultural Forum that I have initiated to a certain degree a few years ago, and we were working on a new formula at that time, I mentioned the need that I hope that my friends will continue working on that for this forum to become something that we don't have in Poland yet, and we should strive to have that this should be a fair of or agricultural show where we share knowledge, agricultural knowledge, farming knowledge, that we can say how the available tools can be used in practice. What was the greatest problem was that with this huge number of various solutions, an average farmer is approaching a dilemma, what to choose, what will work well for them. It's not only about farmers, but also advisors, counselors, also entrepreneurs who are used to a certain methods of operation and can miss this moment. And the moment that we have right now, the momentum that we have right now, if we miss this as the European Union, as Poland, as individual producers, if we miss the fact that right now we have access to data, that the development will be driven by data, processed based on algorithms of artificial intelligence, that we have very coherent tools insofar as processing of data and transfer of data. If we miss this moment, then we will lose, and we'll lose not only because of the fact that we won't be able to implement the ambitious goals or objectives of the European Commission insofar as agriculture and insofar as the new Green Deal, but we won't be able to compete simply with our partners today, but competitors from other countries from outside of the EU. And this also, well, it seems quite obvious in this area of traditional farming. Europe is a leader here. If we miss this moment, then unfortunately we won't develop, but we'll be losing time and position. Thank you, Minister. And now someone from the studio will keep switching between the studio and online. Dr. Arkadiusz, please. What may I add after this very rich part and interesting interventions? It was very nice to listen to these substantial arguments. I would like to add one thing, commenting on what Mr. Minister has said insofar as challenges. We cannot give up on that path, of course, and try to go around the major challenge, which is climate protection and activities for the development of agriculture. I believe that what is very important is to remember that getting acquainted with with innovations, with new solutions is easier when education and examples are happening before implementation, and safety and security is also a priority for me. Changes in the methods of management, support for management in agriculture. So data will be especially important here, and it will be also, of course, requiring security, protection, and adequate management. Therefore, any arguments that were presented here, I think that we should express positive thoughts about the change. Of course, analyze it and present arguments that are in favor of such an evaluation happening in Europe. But of course, every single one of the European Commission is in a way ready to start to work on this path and should have an opportunity to present or to draft a pathway right or specific for this given country. So I've talked about safety, security, and sustainable development. This is going to be the key that will take us, I hope, to a positive effect. Thank you very much. Thank you. Director Wiśniewski, please, a very short intervention because time is flying, but just 2 words of summary.
One of the roles of the National Agricultural Support Center is to run or help coordinate innovation projects. So I urge all of you listening, watching us, if you have ideas for innovation that could help us, Polish farmers, Polish producers and processors, please let me know. I'm here for you. And I'm very keen to get together with you and discuss, and maybe we can do some projects together. Number 2, education, definitely. There's no innovation without education. Very soon, as the National Support Center for Agriculture will start our training campaign for trainers, for farmers. We'll train them in photovoltaics and biogas boilers. But of course, innovation in farming is not only CAP, it's also Horizon 2020, it's also National R&D Center. And we have also loans that are available to farmers for innovative projects. So please take advantage of all the sources of funding. Well, after this webinar, your phone will be ringing off the hook and your email box, your inbox will be full. Yeah, but this is what we're here for. Over to Dr. Kerstin Bursek. So if you could make your concluding remarks.
Yes, innovation uptake definitely, if innovations are developed in co-creation with the farmers in order to address the actual needs that they have, innovations must have a benefit in terms of sustainability and profit that must be clear and apparent to the farmer. and education and continued support on how to apply these technologies is also of utmost importance here.
Thank you so much. Very brief, but very to the point, very concrete. And now over to Dr. Łykowski. I believe that big and small farms, big industry and smaller farmers, they are keen on doing innovation. They are keen on Green Deal. There is a number of startups in Poland who are just out there generating idea after idea. So I would like to say that our government should support such initiatives, because these initiatives could help us achieve our sustainable growth goals sooner, right? And Dr. Plewa? Well, I'm quite optimistic in terms of, I think that innovation will hit Poland. And I think that our farmers have proven to us that they know how to invest and how to innovate and modernize their farms. So I think we will progress. But also, we need to start thinking about more sustainable production rather than more production. This is our new objective. We have to communicate this new objective, make farmers aware of it, and work together with them. You know, private businesses are doing this, have been doing this. Banks, of course, and government institutions should work hand in hand with farmers, making sure that they innovate for environmental protection, for climate change, or for preventing climate change, for improvement of soil and water quality. These are our priorities for the years to come, to me. And now over to Brussels. Director Wolfgang Burtscher. So if you could give us your concluding remarks, how to promote innovation.
Thank you very much. And I very carefully listened also to the remarks from our colleagues in Poland. And I was very impressed by all the activities that are carried out, starting with digitalization of the country. And I think reference was made to cohesion policies. But as you know, now with the recovery and resilience plans, there are new opportunities for funding of digitalization. So I think that is hugely important. When it comes to specific the situation in Poland and innovation, in these recommendations that we have made to all member states, we have also made recommendations to Poland regarding research and innovation. And as for almost all countries, I think we recommend to further invest in knowledge, advice, innovation, and digital skills. We have found that Poland's advisory services will have to be prepared to respond to the growing information needs for farmers. And as we have discussed, very importantly, also small farmers. And I would not be so apocalyptic when it comes to the small farmers and the digitalization, because as Jerzy has singled out and has outlined, there are also applications which do not cost a lot of money, but which are accessible to farmers, for example, in the context of the short supply chains. So evidently, we have also to look that the quality of the advisors is good, that there is no fragmentation of the advisory services. So there is a lot of work ahead of us, both for us in the Commission and in member states and in Poland, to address innovation. But again, I think it is key if we want to address these challenges that we are now facing with climate change. And innovation is really the tool, and I think that has become also very clear in the discussion, that might facilitate us to square the circle, which is having a good income for farmers and still being ecologically sustainable. And I think that is what research and innovation can deliver. Many thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Director. I would like to thank everyone who participated. we can say that, well, now our debate and our webinar is coming to an end. We've ran over. I would like to say sorry, apologize everyone whose schedule is tight, including our minister and the director general of DG Agri. But well, these topics are really fascinating, and we could spend all day talking about this. We haven't even touched upon animal welfare. We haven't touched about antimicrobial resistance. Maybe we'll be able to mention these issues and these topics during our future fora. And I'm convinced that agriculture, Polish agriculture and global agriculture will deal with all these challenges, and hopefully will manage to conserve our environment, to protect our environment, but also we have to make sure that Europe stops being a food importer. We have to make sure that we maintain our food security, and I'm talking about food products of top quality, and I hope innovation will help it. I would like to thank everyone who participated in our webinar, everyone who was watching and listening. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And of course, be with us during the following webinars of the European Agricultural Forum. I would like to thank everyone who was with me in the studio, as well as everyone who connected online. Thank you for making this panel discussion happen. And I would like to wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy. All the best. Thank you.